Well, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for being here today. My name is Abe Layden, Chair of the Board of County Commissioners and the Commissioner Lead for the Homeless Initiative. I am incredibly honored to have so many engaged citizens here, members of our municipalities, partners in law enforcement, the nonprofit community, the faith-based community, who is especially invited here today. So today is on some level a combined meeting of the Douglas County Faith-Based Initiative and the Homeless Initiative. And I'm looking at Aaron White, one of our phenomenal leaders in the community, deeply connected with MANA, Cherry Hills, and all things human services and addressing people in crisis in the community. We're so thankful that you're here. This homeless initiative has had some great success, starting with the HEART team, the Homeless Engagement Assistance Resource Team, really, which is a partnering between law enforcement and a navigator to ensure that DIAD cohort can go out and engage directly with people in crisis. We also have made the decision to approve navigation and really have that opportunity from people leading the Justice Center to have that criminal reintegration piece. So a criminal reintegration officer has been identified as well as a vehicle. I know that a few of our navigators have been hired, and I'm seeing one of them at the end of the table. I don't know if you wanted to introduce yourself.
I'm Tiffany Marcito. I'm the supervisor for the HEART team.
Great. Well, thank you for being here today. So we're moving sort of onward and upward, and there are a number of ideas that have bubbled up. And we often say in Douglas County, we don't wait to do great. So we're really thankful for all of your input today. I know two concepts in particular we're discussing. One is the uniform signage throughout the county that really encourages people to give generously, but not out of your window. We want to keep people safe and out of medians and keep them from rolling down their windows and giving cash out of the side of their SUV. So you'll see some signage and some design from our sign subcommittee, and hopefully we'll get some input from you on that. The second big piece is associated with an idea that bubbled up from the Rock Church, Mike Cohimus. And again, we're so thankful for their partnership in terms of where we're at addressing human needs in the county. So we're looking forward to that from him. But again, thank you so much for being here. And I'll turn it back to Jen. Yeah.
Great. Well, we are going to kick it off with this year. For the first time, we did a summer point in time count for homelessness. And this is just really a way for us to get a better feel for how many people are experiencing homelessness in our community. So we did that. Well, we always do that in the winter, and this year we did a summer point in time. So Rand Clark is going to give us a presentation on that.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you. Let me take one moment and get my screen share over to the right slides. Started. I can get all the other windows out of the way. There we go. Excellent. So the summer point in time is a survey of those in our community who are experiencing homelessness. We do this every year in the winter, as mandated by the Department of Housing and Urban Development, typically at the end of January every year. When we concluded this survey this last winter, the Douglas County Homeless Initiative Executive Committee recommended that we take an additional count in the summertime in order to sort of see what changes happen. Are there seasonal adjustments to those in our community who are experiencing homeless during the winter versus during the summer? And then because this was our own count that was administered based on our desires as a community to understand homelessness, we were able to move slightly out, sort of beyond the scope of what the federal government wants us to count, so that we have a more full picture of what's going on. And so I'm happy to share with you the results of that this morning, and to give you some context for our conversation this morning. So the survey was done on over a week, but we asked the question, where did folks stay on the night of July 25th? That was a Monday night. That is consistent with how we do it in the wintertime. We pick one night and we ask them where they stay that night. So it's a snapshot of what's going on in our community. But it was conducted for the full week. From the 25th through to the 28th, we had teams in our community that were able to reach out, connect with folks, and survey folks who are experiencing homelessness across the entire county. This was certainly a collaborative effort that was just supported by everybody in our community, from our nonprofits, especially our law enforcement entities. We had a number of officers and deputies that helped us conduct this count. They're the ones that are out there every day, all year right now, really connecting with folks and serving folks who are out there. We had a great effort by search and rescue. I can tell you right now, just as a side note on search and rescue, through their efforts, they covered over 2,700 acres of open space, trail space in Douglas County. That's a large swath of our community. We weren't just driving up and down 25 or 470 and County Line Road and the main thoroughfares, Highlands Ranch Parkway. We hit over 2,700 acres. Those were, I mean, you name the park, you name the open space. We had coverage from our search and rescue teams, from our mounted patrol out there, covering those grounds, looking for folks in our community who might be experiencing homelessness. And then finally, our HEART team, our homeless engagement assistance and resource team, was out there, as well as volunteers from our community actually conducting the survey. So I really do want to say a tremendous amount of thank you to all the effort that went into this. This was not done haphazardly. It was done very strategically, very systematically, with a great amount of resources put into trying to understand this as best as we possibly can. So what do the numbers tell us? So we're going to start with a number that I call PIT qualified. This is the most apples to apples comparison versus what we saw in July versus what we saw in January. We used the exact same criteria, the exact same definitions, the exact same sort of process of counting. The number that we encountered in January was just finalized, close to finalized by the Metro Denver Homeless Initiative. We initially reported 72 to you last year. We know that number was going to change. It was initial number. Our final number right now for January was 78. And the number that is an apples to apples comparison from July to January is 90. So a slight increase, summertime versus wintertime. We expected that. That was anticipated based on the volume of calls, and just sort of as we talked to our partners, what they're experiencing, we anticipated this slight increase. You can see by communities where we found folks in Parker, Castle Rock, Lone Tree, and Highlands Ranch. We did not collect any surveys of anybody sleeping in Castle Pines or Larkspur. Now, I'm going to show you some data from Castle Pines and Larkspur in a minute, but for the purposes of the PIT, we did not find anybody, even though we did do outreach in the Larkspur area and in the Castle Pines area. We did not find anybody. So I want to make sure that I state that and I'm clear about that. What we also did is, in partnership with the Sheriff's Office, we looked at some data from our detention center. We know that there, and we've heard from the Sheriff's Office that there is an impact of the folks that are in our detention center who are experiencing homelessness. And so through their staff, they provided surveys to everybody that was in the detention center. It was voluntary. So we had a number of folks that refused. We had a number of folks that said, I think it was 124, Nicole's in the room and can confirm if I'm wrong on that, but there's 124 that said they had a house or an apartment. But we did have 134 that responded with some sort of unstable housing condition the night before they came into detention. So we asked them, the night before you came in, where were you? Were you unsheltered? That's literally outside, on the streets in an encampment or in a tent. Were you in a hotel? Were you in your vehicle? Were you staying temporarily with friends or family? That's the largest portion, 34%. So we had 134 that reported some sort of unstable housing. And as you can see, they came from across the Denver metro area. The largest three were Douglas County, Arapahoe County, and Denver. And so those are the largest three, but we did have folks from other metro area communities, Colorado Springs, other counties from around the state, and even some who the night before they were in detention were from out of state. And so we get a depth of knowledge of information around who was in the detention center on that Monday night. And again, thank you to Chief and Sheriff and your staff at the detention center that helped us gather that data. It's very much appreciated. We also worked with the school district. The school district is required through the McKinney-Vento Act to provide certain services to students who are experiencing homelessness. Now, they don't count and gather data on the whole family. They count and gather data on the kiddo who is school-aged. In January, the kids are in school, so it's a little bit different what we have available to us in January versus July when they're all on summer vacation. But through the school district and their McKinney-Vento liaison, we were able to gather some information about kids who in July were already registered for this upcoming school year and have reported that they are homeless going into the school year, right? So these are kids that are going to be coming to school yesterday. I think was this week's first week of school, I think for the most part. Like, so now by the time we get today are in school, but are receiving services because of their status of meeting the federal definition of homelessness for the schools. Now you can see with this data, 82% of them are doubled up. So what that means is they're couch surfing, they're staying with friends or family, they're living in a guest bedroom, maybe in a basement, they're staying with their natural community support. This is not kiddos outside on the street primarily. This is kids staying with somebody who is taking care of them and their family. And so I want you to hear that. I believe this is a vulnerable population in our community, but this is also a population of our community that is being cared for by our community, right? We have a very compassionate citizens and community that take care of ourselves. And this is a great, I think, example of that. However, 13% are in shelter or transitional housing, and there are a handful of them that are unsheltered. That typically means they're living in a vehicle, just translating that. And then you can also see by sort of region, these are the schools that they are associated with. So this isn't necessarily where they're staying. This is that 92% of them are enrolled in a school in Castle Rock. 88 of them are enrolled in a school in Highlands Ranch. 80 are enrolled in a school in Parker. 57 in Lone Tree, 8 in a school in Larkspur, and 6 in a school in Castle Pines. So know that that location isn't necessarily based on where they're staying. It's based on their school that they're enrolled in. But again, gives us a sense of the overall sort of state of homelessness in our community as it relates to this effort and this initiative. And so this is the data we have from the school district. We grabbed some additional data. We know that there are a lot of folks in our community who live permanently in a hotel. They're not classified necessarily as homeless from HUD's perspective because they pay for it on their own. But for us, it means they don't have a permanent place to live. These aren't people who are just on vacation coming to visit. These are people who are living in hotels as their regular place to live. As we sit down and talk with our hotel owners and managers, especially some of the ones that we see frequented, these are folks who are living there 2, 3, 4 weeks, 6, 8, 9 months, some for many years in our hotels. So we reached out to about a half dozen of them just to get a sense of what was going on. Some of them were unwilling to share the data, but we know from the ones that did share that we had 42 other individuals that we don't capture in our point in time data, but were living in a hotel full time. I'm going to tell you right now that number is higher. We just couldn't get it, but we were able to report at least 42. But we have another group of folks that are staying in behavioral health systems that would otherwise be homeless. Again, by point in time standards, they don't qualify as homeless, but we know that if they weren't in this detox facility or in this, care facility of some sort, that they may be homeless out on the street. They were homeless before coming in. There were 13. And then we did have some that just flat out didn't want to talk to us, and that's okay. So as we came across somebody in a parking lot and, they were sleeping in their car and it's pretty obvious they're in their car, and they're like, I don't want to talk to you and I don't want to give you any of my information. We said, thank you very much. And we just marked where we talked to them and we marked it down as a refusal, but we can't deduplicate these, right? These people in this screen right here may be otherwise surveyed. And then finally, we did come across, especially through the efforts of search and rescue and law enforcement, a number of abandoned encampments. So these were places where we had evidence that people either were sleeping there at one point in time, but nobody was present when we came by. And so we marked that as an abandoned camp, but we couldn't serve anybody. All we saw was a sleeping bag or a tent or their belongings behind. And so we were able to identify at least 14 of those through efforts. So put it all together. What does that mean? What is what's the bigger picture? It's this. This is our expanded count of folks who are unsheltered, folks who are sheltered, those in care facilities, and those who are temporarily housed. Now, remember, those who are temporarily housed aren't outside sleeping in an encampment. These are folks that have a roof over their head, but they live in very unstable housing conditions. And if you're staying with friends and family, one little thing goes wrong and you could be outside or in your vehicle pretty quickly. So they're a very vulnerable population, but these aren't 324 people sleeping outside. Those are 324 people that have unstable housing and are right on that edge. The number for this group, for the homeless initiative that I want to call your attention to really is the 83 unsheltered. Those are the folks across our community who are living outside, living in your car, living in their cars. It's about split 50-50. We did find a number of folks living in their vehicles on the night of the camp, on the night of the count. And so that is the folks that really are outside that don't have a place safely to stay. Those are sheltered in hotels, in transitional housing, in emergency overnight shelter. And then the 147, that care facility, that includes detention and the behavioral health settings as well. So by region and by jurisdiction, this is how it breaks down. Castle Rock has a really huge number. If you're from Castle Rock, that number is going to look really big at 47%. There's an asterisk there. That includes those who are in detention, right? So detention is 134 people with unstable housing in detention. That's a lot of people. That's not 47% of our homeless sleeping outside. That's just the overall big count. And we want to be honest, that's where they are. But many of our hotels and the detention folks are staying in Castle Rock. The majority of the hotels that we were able to talk to were hotels that were in Castle Rock. But that gives us the idea breakdown. If we took the detention and out of this number, they would be about equivalent to Parker and Lone Tree. All the other data suggests that that's correct. So really, it's fairly spread out across our community. Finally, one last side note as a part of our disabling conditions. We ask folks kind of what are some of the conditions around their homelessness, what's causing it. These are the highest rated ones. This was not a required, answer. And so many folks refused to tell us this. So this really, I would qualify as a sample set of data. And I think there's enough to be statistically relevant. We had enough responses. About 60 of our responses included these. And so we've got a fairly good sample set to know that things like drug and alcohol use, mental health concerns, domestic violence, and chronic health conditions are amongst the highest issues that those in our community who are experiencing homelessness are experiencing. So we wanted to put that in there as well. And then finally, one last note, as a part of this effort, we on Tuesday night did a Strive to Thrive. This is a resource fair hosted by Southeast Christian Church in our community with many of our community nonprofits and partners. It's a wonderful event. It's a great way as we're out talking to folks who are experiencing homeless to try and help them come to this event, but also to reach out to our community in a one-stop shop to try and get folks support they need. I see Pastor Dave Love is here. His church has graciously hosted the winter event for many years, and Southeast hosted this on the 26th. We had 540 attendees. They gave away 582 backpacks full of school supplies, which was a tremendous effort by the Foundation for Douglas County Schools. And one of the fun ones we had this year, you see a picture. We had a beauty school come out and give haircuts. They had like 8 stylists there giving free haircuts to all the kids as they're getting ready to go back to school. And something new we've done the last couple is we've had therapy dogs, and they wear ties, and they're so cute and wonderful, and everybody loves them. And it's just a fun sort of way to break the ice and to engage folks in our community. And so that is the numbers from the executive committee. I'd be happy to take any questions if you have questions around that data. But again, a tremendous thank you to everybody who participated. That was a lot of information in a fairly short amount of time. Thank you for letting me share that with you. So.
Great. I am not seeing any questions on.
I've got a quick question.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, so Kevin Rance, City Council for the City of Castle Pines. Thank you for the data, and I understand there were no contacts made in Castle Pines. The northeast side of our city, which is outside of our city boundaries, but adjoins the city, towards that RTD area, we've had a lot of citizen concerns starting to come up about the homeless encampments. And can you just tell me if there was any contacts made up in that area and what those numbers might be? I'm sure that's probably a little bit more granular than the details you have. That's fine.
So what I can tell you is that area was covered by search and rescue. Okay. And so we did have a number of folks out in that community. I'd be happy to follow up with exactly how many encampments, but we did find a few. It was under a handful, but I hesitate to give you an exact number on the spot. I'd have to look for it of encampments, but we did not encounter any people that were in those encampments. That would be what I'm going to classify as the Surrey Ridge area. So from Castle Pines down Surrey Ridge, on and along I-25, a little bit extended to the east and west, up through that Ridge Gate area. We did survey that area, and there were a few. I want to say it was less than 5, but it was all abandoned, leftover encampments. We did see some as we started to get into Lone Tree's area that had been tagged by the city of Lone Tree as according to their processes for identifying and requesting the removal of those encampments. So. At a high level, that's what I can tell you. If you'd like a specific number, we can go back to our data and look. But it was a couple.
No, that's fine. Like I said, it's outside of our city boundaries. We're just starting to see more and more concerned citizens from our constituency. The other area that we're starting to notice some citizen complaints that is within the boundaries is on the periphery of the Daniels Park overflow parking lot right on the west side of our city. And so that's something, I mean, initially we're going to ask our friends at the Douglas County Sheriff's Office to just keep an eye out for that. The bigger concern for us right now is just the open burning, but we're not quite sure what's going on in there yet. Some of the residents have expressed finding some what looks like remnants of homeless camping sites there, and that's a new development for us. So
Yeah, we did look at the Daniels Camp area. And then there was a couple of the surrounding areas that we did look at as well. We had patrol officers, bike officers, I think primarily in that area. But we did have an eye on that area as well.
all right, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
You know, if I could just touch on that too, Councilman, I think that's a really good comment. And in our last homeless initiative meeting, we talked a lot about our priority to ensure that Douglas County remains safe and clean. And one of the beautiful parts of the HEART team is that when a citizen calls the HEART team, we have a dedicated cleanup crew that can actually go right out to those encampments, particularly those that are abandoned, and address those issues. Another item that came up last time was the nexus with our wildfire initiative, and how much potential danger exists when there are, open burning and propane tanks being used in our open space. So thank you for raising that.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I just want to follow up on something important that the commissioner said. One of the challenges that we have, and it was referenced that the camps were tagged, is that we've been told, but case law supports our attorney, our city attorney, letting us know we can't just go remove the stuff. We've got to post it. It's got to be signed, and there has to be an opportunity for the people to go reclaim their things. And so I think we are bound so much by what has been decided by others and has been decided in case law. So we wish we could just go clean those camps up right away, but there is a process that we have to follow. So I know our public sometimes gets frustrated because it's abandoned, just get rid of it, but we cannot do that. But we are putting in processes and are legally defensible processes to get out there and get them cleaned as soon as we can. I just wanted to add that comment to, so people have an understanding. We're not ignoring it. It's tagged for a reason. It's a process.
Yeah, I remember that discussion from a couple meetings ago. I guess that my follow-up question to that, the concern came because these were discovered on private property. So does that factor in when it's private property as well?
Amy, would you like to speak to that? Amy Edwards from our county attorney's office.
Sure. It's a little different when it is private property because it's considered trespass. So there are different case law doesn't necessarily apply. However, it's still, I guess, good practice you can remove it, but then have a place for, if they wanted to come claim it, have it stored. And I'm not sure what Lone Tree.
Kurt could.
So, if it's public property or South Suburban, which is what we end up having a lot of them on, is South Suburban will assist us with posting and removing the property. But if it's on private property, then we'll tell them to leave immediately because they're on private property. We work with the property owner to get, make sure they're in cooperation with the trespassing part of all that, because we need a victim for that. And then it's really the property owner's responsibility to clean up whatever property is left over. And then we work with them to get that done, depending on the size of or the scope of the trash and debris.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions from the committee?
Can I ask a question?
We're not in public comment yet. We'll get there, but this is a combined meeting of the faith-based initiative, the working group, and the executive committee of the homeless initiative, but we will open it up for citizen comment. Go ahead.
Okay, so I do not think we have any online. Any others? Okay. So we're gonna move on to the next item on our agenda, and that is a update from HEART. So that is our homeless engagement Assistance and Resource Team. And as Commissioner Layden's pointed out, we have one of our HART team members here, Tiffany Marcito, to give us an update.
Yes, thank you. So we did hire a second navigator. He's in the room. I'll let him speak. His name is Greg Matthews. I'll let him introduce himself in just a second. But after the point in time week, we have been actively riding along with law enforcement, getting a feel for our community, the homeless population, what the needs are of the homeless population that we've been in contact with. We've been helping law enforcement tag the camps, kind of see their process and all of that. And yesterday, Greg was out with Castle Rock and they actually cleaned up 4 camps. So we are actively out in the community making contact with these individuals and seeing what kind of resources we can provide. Even though we're not fully staffed, we are ready to go and ready to serve this community. So we're so excited to be here. So thank you, everyone. And Greg, do you want to introduce yourself?
I have a lot of experience, FEMA, crisis. I've worked with a number of local mental health authorities, and I used to work as an intervention specialist with the state of Texas. And now I'm a part of the HART team, and I'm ready to make the change. I'm all the way here from Texas to be here for this position. So I'm really glad about the change.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. We are very excited to have you both on board and out and working within the community with our law enforcement as well. So,
You said you've already done 4 cleanups
We did 4 cleanups in Castle Rock yesterday.
yesterday. That is fantastic.
The 4 days that we have went out with law enforcement, we've made 19 contacts with homeless individuals. 6 abandoned camps have been tagged and 4 have been cleaned.
okay. Any other questions for Tiffany on HART? Hey. Okay, well, we are going to move on to our next item in the agenda, which is talking about our sign committee that has been hard at work. So let me share my screen. Okay. Just to get started for us, I did put, I know we have a lot of people here. I did want to just make a note that I included the Board of County Commissioners email address. If we are unable to get to comments today for anyone and you still would like to share some information with us, this is the email that you'll be able to do that with. Not only will that go to the Board of County Commissioners, it will also be then sent to staff as well. So just wanted to make a note of that for you.
We can't read it over here or there.
We'll make it available online. It will be on the Douglas County Homeless Initiative website, all of our presentations.
Go ahead and read it. Google that, Douglas
So-
County Homeless Initiative.
Yes, and the email is bocc@douglas.co.us. I'll say it again at the end as well. You're welcome. So wanted to kick this off. We have had a very active sign committee that has been working very hard with us. We have been working with this group for about 5 months now on putting signs together and developing what a communication strategy can look like for our efforts here with the Homeless Initiative. So just want to let you know that we have been working closely with elected officials, with public works professionals, also our communication professionals, law enforcement, and have made some inroads with CDOT and RTD. I will say we have more to do in that area, but we are working with them as well. So we have a lot of work that's happening along those lines. And the first thing that we wanted to do was really set out some objectives for this group. We understand that we do have panhandling in our community. And from the onset, I want to just say that we also understand that panhandling is not necessarily always homeless. It's also not it's not illegal to panhandle. But we do have a lot of people in our community who are quite generous. And I would say that we have a reputation for being an area where it is quite lucrative to panhandle. So we understood that, and one of the objectives that we put in place was really to discourage panhandling activity in our community. So what we would also like to do along those lines is redirect that wonderful generosity to our providers in our community who are nonprofit organizations and providing those direct homeless services already currently, and some that we expect to be doing as well. So I'll get into more on all of this, but the other thing we wanted to be able to do with these signs, so we're doing a lot with these signs. We want to be able to connect and provide a connection to resources. So those were our main objectives when we got started with this. So I'm going to kind of walk through our thought process with this committee and try and summarize that for you. So with that first objective of trying to stop that panhandling activity, we felt like it was very important that we had a very clear message about this. So it had to be very straightforward, to the point, and consistent and uniform as much as possible. So our point also was to disincentivize that panhandling because it's unsafe to give money out of your car or, you know, to hand money to somebody. So we wanted to make sure that we encouraged a safe way to give. We also looked at a lot of different locations, and we talked closely with our law enforcement participants on the committee about these things. And based on that, we understood from them where they were seeing panhandling occur. And we understood that that was in both private and public locations. So that means that we're going to have a couple different messages that we need to communicate using these signs. And we did hear, I will say, we did hear a lot that we are seeing that law enforcement is seeing panhandling activity at businesses. So in parking lots, on the corners of parking lots, that sort of thing. We heard that very strongly and understand that there is probably a very strong business aspect to this. And I know we have some chamber representatives here in economic development organizations, and we want to make sure that we're working with you all as well to get to the point where we can make those signs available in both public and private locations. So what we came to after looking at all these different things was we needed to be, like I said, very clear, very to the point. What we came to was the message of don't give money out of your car. Don't give money. The next objective we talked about was redirecting that generosity. So along these lines, we wanted to find a safe way for people to be able to make contributions. And so we did that through, we also want to support multiple organizations here. So we asked the Douglas County Community Foundation to partner with us and set up a dedicated fund. And that dedicated fund allows people to donate, and then those funds will be directly distributed to agencies. So as I said, direct distribution to the homeless service providers is what we have in mind with that. So we've identified who those providers are, and honestly, these are the agencies that are providing that direct service. So these are all, with the exception of the Homeless Initiative, these are all our nonprofits that are providing direct services. So Help and Hope, Winter Shelter Network, who provides shelter in the winter months, and Family Tree. We've talked a lot about the Goals program. Family Tree is the organization that runs and does the goals program. So they have been included in this. And then we also have a lot of implementation that is happening through the Homeless Initiative. So wanted to be sure that we were able to support those initiatives as we are implementing them going forward. So, you know, right now that could be used for cleanup, that could be used to help with the heart team, that could also be used with signage, that sort of thing. So that's what that looks like. And as I said, those will be direct distributions. So what we came to is that we needed a way to give safely. We do that to one centralized point, and then once a kind of minimum level of contributions is given, then a direct distribution will be given to those agencies. There will not be any sort of a grant application or anything associated with that. We want to make sure that that funding gets in their hands as quickly as possible. And we did look at a couple of things connected to the redirecting generosity idea that I just want to touch base on. We have looked at a lot of other areas where they encourage a texting option for texting to give sort of thing, which we know would be a lot more straightforward and easier to do. But what we heard from our law enforcement is that they do not want us to encourage drivers to text. So we avoided that option. We also talked about a QR code. So you could just, you know, take a picture, it takes you right to the website where you make a donation. We were also told by law enforcement that there is quite a bit of fraud that's happening with QR codes. So people can put a sticker on that QR code and it redirects them to a different website. So we did not go with either one of those options, but we did come up with a solution that I'm going to talk about in a minute. So the third thing that we really wanted to do, as I said, through these signs with the objectives is having a connection to our homeless engagement, assistance, and resource team. So again, we want to make that connection to the heart team, but we also want to communicate with these signs that this is a partnership. This is a, you know, co-responder team. We have our heart navigators, which we've introduced you to, but through the police departments, they have also identified law enforcement staff that will be working directly in partnership with our heart team. So we wanted to make sure that we're communicating that this is a compassionate response that we're doing, but we are partnering this with law enforcement. We also wanted to give you a couple different ways to contact the heart. And team is part of the heart, but I keep doing it. I'm going to keep referring to them as the heart team. So we do have a phone number that is a direct link actually to our navigators. So it is a phone number. It has a phone tree associated with it. If you see a person who's experiencing homelessness and you'd like to have them go out and do a wellness check, or you see an abandoned camp or something like that, we encourage you to contact the heart team through this direct phone number. And it will navigate you to what area you have seen this in. And then we eventually will have the heart team members designated to each community. So it will go directly to that team member's cell phone. We are not quite operational with the heart team yet. So you are going to see a phone number on our proposed sign, but we are still in the process of, as Tiffany said, hiring and training the heart team. So that phone number is active, but and we will direct you, but it's not as fast of a response until we have our heart team on board and trained and ready to go.
Can you verbalize that number, please?
You'll see it.
I can't see. Can't see.
It's coming. It's in the next slides.
I thought it was on the screen.
So this is what we came to. For help, call HEART, your compassionate law enforcement team. So we also, as I talked about, we needed a way that was outside of the QR code, outside of the text to give. We have a lot of information that we're trying to communicate here. So we wanted to put a memorable URL together. This URL will be connected and on the Douglas County web pages. We wanted to make sure that we had that connection there. We want people to understand that they've reached a credible website, that they have reached a website that they can trust, especially if we're asking for them to donate. So we will have that dedicated webpage. We will have a button on there that is a direct link. Once you click that, it goes straight to the Douglas County Community Foundation if you want to make a donation. We will also have a way to contact the Heart Team. And as I said, we will have a direct phone number for that. We will also have a chat feature on this website. And we are all in a design stage for the sign right now. So these things are not up and going yet. I will make that announcement. But it will be coming soon. So we will have a chat feature on the website so that you can type in, use your phone, use your computer, and that will also connect you to the Heart. We will also have information and resources on that website. So we have a lot of things that, as I said, we're trying to communicate here. We want to make sure that you understand a little bit about what organizations, you're making a donation to. We'll have that information on there. And we'll also have information about those resources that are available to assist the homeless population. So the website that we have acquired for this will be DouglasHasHeart.org. Again, that is not up and going yet. We are in a design process right now. So next we talked about a lot of different sign components, and I wanted to make sure that I mentioned all of these things. We were very, we wanted to make sure that we were following all of the sign code, aspects. So we used the Manual on Information Traffic Control devices to help us determine what color selection should look like, what font size should be for readability, that sort of thing. We also, on the color selections, wanted to make sure that we avoided colors that are your typical signs so we don't confuse people. And I forgot to mention, the messaging, again, was very important as we were going through this. We wanted to make sure we were considering our audience and our location. We know that the sign components are going to be dependent upon that. We also wanted to have a logo that is very recognizable. So that is a logo that we will use for all of the homeless initiative. You will see that logo on the Heart Team's shirts. You'll see it on the sign. You'll see it on the website, on the DouglasHasHeart.com or .org website. So, and we also did include the Douglas County logo. We were asked to do that to make sure, again, that there's that trust and credibility about this process, and it is Douglas County that is leading the homeless initiatives. So we were happy to do that. And this is the final sign design that the committee is recommending. At this point, I do want to mention a few kind of next steps before I open this up. We understand that every municipality has their own sign code. So we will be working with each of the different municipalities. And for those of you who are here from a municipality, if you have a direct person to contact me with about that, I would very much appreciate that. But we understand we need to go through that. We also need to finalize the locations of the signs, and we're working through that with the committee to finalize where they should be. With our municipality representatives and and working in conjunction with law enforcement. We still need to gain some regional permission along these lines. So we are still working on, we likely have to do an IGA with CDOT to be able to do signs in their right of way. So as you're on the on and off ramps on I-25, we definitely need to have permits in order to do that, and we have to have an IGA in place. So we are still working through that process. We are doing the same with RTD, and expect to reach out to we have 2 district representatives that are on the RTD board. We'll be reaching out to them as well.
IGA is intergovernmental agreement. I saw
Sorry.
a couple people in the audience ask, what's an IGA?
Yes, that's an intergovernmental agreement for us to be able to work with CDOT on this. We'll also we will be working on a communication strategy. And one thing I very much want to say is that these signs are not designed to stand alone. They will be done in connection with a communication strategy. We will be working with all the communication professionals from all of the different jurisdictions and our partners to make sure this is a very widespread approach. So I am going to go back to the sign design and ask for any input or any questions.
How big is that sign?
Oh, and guys, we'll open it up for public comment at the end. This is for the executive committee and the working group. And we will get to you. Mayor Malek.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to comment. And again, thanks for walking us through this very, very thoughtful, deliberate process. As Commissioner Layden knows, I do have some concerns with the content of the signs. Thank you so much for putting on the Douglas County logo. I think that does add credibility and accomplish everything that you're trying to achieve. But from my perspective, and I've chatted with a couple of my mayor partners about this, I don't want to speak for anybody else, but there's a heck of a lot of information on this sign. And I think what matters most right now for me is give where it matters, make your gift count. And I feel like that messaging is lost on this. People who are inclined to give money out their car window are not inclined to call law enforcement. I think having the phone number on there, I appreciate you walking through. Darren will disagree with me, but I like a text thing because it's an automatic gratification and people want to do something right then. And I don't want them to just not hand dollars out their window. I want them to hand nothing out their window, not water, not apples, I realize that, but they want to do something, but I want them to do something effective. And as we all know, continuing to hand things out a car window is not effective. So I'm a little bit concerned with it just focusing on dollars. And I would rather have the messaging be positive, like the lessons I learned as a parent with my children, telling them don't is kind of like, nobody's telling me what I can or can't do. So they're going to give. I would rather say give effectively at DouglasHasHeart.org. And that's pretty much all I wanted to say. And then I think for help, Paul Hart and that other could be part of a comprehensive education program. I know that God bless our commander who participated in the sign, and he does a lot of great things. Designing signs is not one of them. And you know I love him, Chief. He's the best. But I do feel like there's too much information. The message should be more positive. Give effectively at DouglasHasHeart.org. And again, keep it simple, stupid, because they're driving in their car and the phone number can go on other information. The people who are driving by who we want to react to this sign, if they call that number, I'm not sure what they're going to get. And I also am concerned about, because it's not illegal to panhandle. Lone Tree used to have an ordinance saying no panhandling. We had to get rid of it. So when you put law enforcement on here, I feel like there's this implication or people are going to think this is illegal and they shouldn't be here and the police can come and take them away. So when they see the police go out and make a contact, they really can't take them away. So that's all great content. I think it all could be used. I just don't think on the panhandling corners, this is the appropriate place. And I've talked to communications department at the city of Lone Tree. And again, I've chatted with some other mayors and I'm not, again, going to speak for them, but those are some concerns I think they shared with me as well.
So Mayor, I really appreciate your input. I know we had a long conversation with you and staff about all of these issues, and graphic design by committee is something I would always caution against. But I think we're really thankful for Chief Duffy and Commander Beals and really all of the members, frankly, the town of Castle Rock and their communications department were the authors of the graphic design piece. We're really thankful for Castle Rock's active participation on the graphics component. I think part of it is we don't want to revamp everything here today.
I
And
appreciate
we
that.
also don't want to let perfect be the enemy of the good.
Appreciate that too.
But the biggest message really is we don't want to replicate the dangers of what's already happening, which is people giving money out of their cars, which only incentivizes more people to panhandle. I think you make a really good point, which is it's not a crime to panhandle, but it's not safe or appropriate for there to be babies and medians or for people to be in significant thoroughfares. So there really is a significant safety issue associated with that message. I know that Wendy Holmes is here from our county communications department. And one of the things that I think is really nice is many of the issues you have, I think, will be addressed in a larger campaign. And I guess I'll turn it over to Ms. Wendy Holmes to speak to that.
I'll do my best. Thank you, Commissioner. As Jennifer mentioned, this signage is not intended to stand on its own. Without a robust communications, public outreach campaign wrapped around the signs and the sign campaign, we will not be successful. It is our intent, and again, this isn't going to work unless everyone recognizes this is a shared responsibility. That means the citizens that are inclined, even the businesses that are inclined to provide chapstick or blankets or food or money. That is not going to help us. We need our citizens, our business community, all of our municipalities. Everyone has to be part of this. Everyone has to support this for this consistent, uniform behavior change to occur. So the best thing I wanted to share is to achieve this behavior change, we know we must provide awareness of and trust in another solution, which, as Jennifer articulated, is this give to this fund that will support existing nonprofit organizations, faith-based community that already are doing what can be done to help those who find themselves unsheltered in this county. We know you care. We know your heart breaks when you see someone in that kind of a situation. But what we really need you to do is redirect your dollars to a central funding source to ensure that your dollars are going to do exactly what you want done, to give people hope, to give people another choice in their life. That is our intent, and working very closely with municipal governments, Lone Tree, Castle Rock, Castle Pines, Parker. That's what we intend to do, and we need the citizens' help as well. So we're going to use all of our social media assets, video. We'll work directly with our media in the county. We'll work directly with everyone who could help us get this word out. We're devoted to this, and we're going to frankly need everybody's help in order for it to work.
So don't disagree with any of that, Wendy, but I guess as a communications professional, in my mind, on a sign that is not going to be that big, this just seems like a lot of words. Is that a true statement or not?
Mayor Malay, you know that,
I'm gonna put you in a weird space. Just say yes or no.
Well-
I'll be an attorney.
oh gosh. No one told me this is going to be a deposition. I believe this for sure. Unless we have municipal support for what is on that sign, whether it's more words or less words, my job is to help you get there.
Right.
For something that's going to work. If you don't think it's going to work, if Castle Rock doesn't think it's going to work, if law enforcement thinks it's too much, it's not, and you're not going to use these signs, we fail. We fail as a community. So I would say, if you think there's too much content there, let's keep working on it.
Okay, so maybe I could just, I mean, I don't want this to be Jackie or the mayor of Lone Tree. I'm just curious if anybody else thinks there's too much content there. And if I could ask them to maybe just raise their hand or
Can I
not.
weigh just real quick as well? So I think, one, I would be really curious when we get to open comment, what citizens see here. like we see one thing because we're really close to the message and what we want to accomplish. But I think we really need to get some public comment on what does this sign say to them? And then the second thing is, I do think it's a little too busy. I think we could tighten it up. There's a lot of good things going with it, right? I love the logo. I think the message, I kind of agree with the mayor that I prefer it to be more positive versus negative. I just think there's too much there. You're not gonna be able to read all that. You could tighten it up and just say, give at douglasheart.org. And if you actually take the opportunity to go to Douglas Heart, that's when you'll find out about all the other stuff that's happening in the region. I don't like the idea of having law enforcement on the bottom for two reasons. One, it kind of implies for help, call, and it says law enforcement. That's not really accurate. One, Heart is not a law enforcement group. It's a civilian group out of Douglas County. Yes, we have law enforcement that are partnered with them, but I don't want to project that if you call this number, you're going to get the police department. And for two reasons. One, because I don't think there are citizens out there that recognize the fact that this is a community-wide problem, not necessarily a criminal problem. If there's a crime being committed, they should call the police department. If they want help, I like the Heart team. I think it's a great idea, but I don't like the idea that we're kind of projecting that it might be a law enforcement response. And I do think there's people out there who would be reluctant to call that number if they thought, oh, now the police are going to come and what are they going to do to this person, right? There's already enough negative implications with law enforcement and the homeless, even though, yes, we interact with them every single day. However, we recognize as we're kind of caught in the middle of two things. You have citizens that are very compassionate, want to give money. You have citizens, quite frankly, that are very angry every time they see a homeless person with a sign. And we get called on both accounts and we get put in very awkward situations to where we can't always do what they want us to do. And so we're kind of mediating and helping and it's a difficult job. And I think if you have that on the sign, to me personally, it's a little misleading about what's actually going to come. And I think it can actually detract from people calling the number to get them help because they may be reluctant to have a law enforcement officer come, even though we would probably show up to help, right? So that's my 2 cents.
I also want to add that I kind of did my own little private polling with citizens and stuff when I was talking about this and what we're going to do. And the message of don't hand out money out of your car. That was the first thing they said is don't tell me what I can or can't do.
Are you my child?
I just when you said that, I kind of chuckled because that was the first thing they're like, that word don't, they immediately, they're like, this is my decision. I don't want the government telling me what I can or can't.
I've heard that once or twice.
Yeah.
I would just add, I think that I agree, the word don't and law enforcement are just inviting those signs to be vandalized.
Yeah.
From a compassionate standpoint, if I'm a person in this community and you're asking me to give and you're asking me to call law enforcement, I'm probably not going to do both. And if our goal is to increase donations to the partners in the community that are providing services, then I probably wouldn't put the law enforcement response on there.
Speaking of kids, so my kids would always want to give donuts or apples or something. And so we started the terminology like, let's give them a handout, not a handout. And so we directed the kids' resources to nonprofits instead of giving out of the car. And that seemed to inspire them to look at nonprofit resources. And that's, I know, terminology on a sign, but that's how our family did it with the kids.
I think that's a better positive message, right? Whether that's the right one or not, but give a hand up, not a handout. That's a pretty positive message. And then you can give it at douglasheart.org. For additional assistance, call the Heart team. Here's the number. I think that's pretty clean. It's not a whole lot of extra words. And then if you're interested, if someone really is interested, they go to that website and they can find out all the information they want to know. And I do think, to Wendy, your point of, I wrote down a couple of notes about, I used to actually own a business. So I know a little bit about cross advertising and stuff like that, just enough to be dangerous. But, we need to be doing this advertising with our business partners. Everybody has to go to Safeway and King Soopers and grocery stores. And you can have these exact same, but more wordy signs right there at those entrances where people can can get the message and we just hammer away, but we got to get our business partners involved in that, not just the internet. And so every time they walk past one, they're seeing it every day, day in and day out. And so I think, I mean, I think we're on the right track.
Yes.
I just think, you know, I think it needs to be palatable for the community, right? Because this is a very sensitive topic. It's a very polarizing issue, in my opinion.
Well, let me speak to a couple of those issues, and I really appreciate Lone Tree weighing in. You're here in force, so I'm glad you shared it with us again on your perspective. You know, so much of what we've heard from our citizens, I really want to acknowledge. What we're not trying to do is replicate what we've seen in large municipalities like San Francisco and frankly even Denver, with all due respect to Denver, where people have become victims of their own compassion. And by giving and giving and giving and giving and handing money out, you're just replicating the situation and causing more individuals to say, wow, this is a great community where I can just get things for free. So I'm going to keep showing up. So I think sending a message of we're just going to give you more stuff is not the right message. In the 5 months that we've had the discussion and the year that we've had this particular initiative, I know one thing we've landed upon from the expert information is that the systemic issue with the panhandling is compassionate citizens that are conflicted at an intersection. They do not know what to do and they are handing money out of their vehicles. If you stop the handing money out of vehicles, the panhandling dries up. Because what are they going to do? If they're getting nothing at Lincoln and I-25, what's going to happen? They're going to find somewhere else to go. Now, we heard a lot about the other services that Douglas County provides, including the Winter Shelter Network, and we're going to hear from Mike on services. It's still compassionate, but one thing I shared with you, Mayor, is I don't think we ever want to decouple law enforcement from what's happening here. And the reason I say that, with all due respect to Chief Duffy, we've seen such success in that co-responder team model in the mental health space, where you have a mental health professional paired with law enforcement that goes out to calls. That way, you don't have people flooding our jails, flooding our hospitals. It actually saves our citizens money, saves our taxpayers money, saves our DA's budgets, saves our sheriff's office with their patrols and what they're doing when you can divert. So I think that's why this HEART team, we've already heard, they've had 4 cleanups yesterday.
Yeah.
That is success in my mind. And from what I have heard from our citizens, they don't want to just hand more money out. And I think a message that says, hey, we're just going to give you more services is probably not the right message. That said, if you go to douglascounty.heart.org, you will find ways. If you're a single mom fleeing domestic violence, you will find services in Douglas County. So I want to recognize there's that compassionate piece, but maybe let me turn it to other municipalities. I don't know, Tim, anything from Castle Rock?
I definitely believe in something a little simpler, but I also know that it could be like give to more established resources type of verbiage. But how do we tell people don't? How are we supposed to do that? Because I think everybody in here wants to do the right thing for their fellow man. How do you tell them, don't do that? We're trying to fix this. We're trying to redirect those resources. So something simple, what that looks like, that's what we're doing here. I would rather be, don't like the word progressive, but I would like to say proactively engaging this for the future. So Commissioner, you're spot on. Again, you're forerunning this and I appreciate that.
Well, I take zero credit for it. This is a large committee and a large group.
Professionals to the left and right of you then.
Well, I agree, and keep in mind too, that this is not a final product. We will continue to refine as part of this initiative. I would encourage this group to consider rolling something out soon, so we're not belaboring and delaying with too much work by committee. And then over time, if you're securing things within your municipalities where we need to tweak and refine, let's do that. I think everything from the HEART team to the criminal reintegration will continue to refine based on input, based on your leadership.
Commissioner, if I could chime in, Darren Wakely, Douglas County Sheriff's Office. I do appreciate Chief Wilson's comments. It is a very polarizing figure. And for the people that want to see a more compassionate approach and not law enforcement being not involved, the other side of that spectrum is they do want law enforcement involved. They are tired of seeing it. And I think having some kind of component just to know law enforcement is engaged in the issue that we are involved in. And the fact of the matter is we also need to let the public know that while we have a very gracious community and very giving community, we also need to know that some of these folks, not all, are dangerous. And when you are being compassionate and handing things out of your car, you're putting yourself at risk as well. So I think it's important for them to know that law enforcement is engaged in partnering in this program and in the community.
Captain Leakley, thank you for that. And, part of it is the safety of our clinicians, the safety of our navigators. We don't want to put navigators in harm's way at 2 a.m. without some law enforcement support. So I think when we say that this is not a law enforcement concept, I just want to be really clear that that's exactly what the Board of County Commissioners approved, was a dyad, was a co-responder team of law enforcement and a navigator.
Yeah, so Commissioner, please, let me make it very clear. I am never suggesting law enforcement isn't involved. I am saying the messaging on this sign is where I don't think it's appropriate. And I think we heard from some law enforcement professionals that there's some agreement there. So before we move forward with something, I do think, and I think we also heard consensus from folks that keep it maybe simplifying this a little bit. So everyone recognizes that law enforcement has a role to play in this space. So that is never what I would want to say. You're saying trying to accomplish everything on one sign when my primary objective is really to stop people giving out their car window. So I think there's a bunch of messaging that could be make your gift matter, donate effectively or donate safely, DouglasHasHeart.org, and that's all it should say, in my opinion. That website is going to lead them to much more information. Now, I think a much more robust program that speaks to the very issue that you raised, and perhaps not on the median signage, but in the signage that in front of the businesses, as Chief Wilson suggested, where people do have more time and can be more thoughtful. I think if we do the right messaging, which I know can happen in Douglas County, our citizens will recognize the link between law enforcement and this homelessness issue. I'm just suggesting it not be on the sign that's trying to discourage panhandling. And I think there's some consensus to that. So I recognize not designed by committee. I recognize we need to move forward. I've been asking for community-wide signage for 4 years that's uniform across the county. Ever since I saw it down in Colorado Springs, I came back and started talking about we need to do something like this. Colorado Springs is give a hand up, not a handout, text donations here. I want to do something, I want to move forward, but I want to make sure that we're effective with what we're doing. So those are the intention of my comments, not to say law enforcement doesn't have a role.
Well, I really appreciate that, Mayor, because Lone Tree's the beautiful welcome sign to all of Douglas County, and we know that you played an active role in this space for a while. But you're always direct. I'm going to be really direct and pointed in response. And I think I'd love to hear this from our citizens as well. When our citizens come home from a Rockies game and encounter people committing crimes, urinating, vandalizing the RTD station in your town, a sign that says, hey, give more. I'm not sure that's the response that our citizens are looking for. I think what they really want to do is see it addressed. And not addressed by just handing more money out. It's actually having law enforcement involved. So that's why I absolutely believe we have to have that law enforcement component part of the signage. Now, what's different is it's a compassionate law enforcement response. And to Chief Wilson's comment, I think this is actually a great opportunity to demonstrate how compassionate and effective law enforcement can be, which you are. You don't get enough credit for that. So I appreciate the thought. I'm wondering if others have concepts around that, and certainly we'll hear more from our citizens. We do have to bridge to Mike Behemoth from The Rock on our next item. I know we're running a little bit short on time. So we'll put a pin in the signage for right now. I'd love to turn it over to Head Pastor Mike Behemoth from The Rock to talk a little bit more about a concept that he had.
Okay, I know we're running short on time, but well, pastors always go quickly, right?
Pack a lunch.
Here we go. That's right. Pack a lunch. So I wrote some things down, so I'm just gonna be looking down, even though I want to be looking at you. Normally I would do it this way, but I want to just make sure I hit these points. First off, though, just so you know who I am Mike Polhemus from the Rock Church, and been working with Douglas County for 8 years now on a lot of different initiatives. I'm just thinking back of all the things we've been able to do together. I've been on the mental health initiative for 7 years. I'm now part of the homeless initiative here. We did a ride together program when we were trying to figure out how to help people in need, because we didn't have some of the public services that other areas had. We've served over 60,000 families meals just in-house to bringing them in by buses and helping people in those with different areas. We have a food bank that serves hundreds of families every other week. We send out about 40,000 pounds of food every month to people in need, to families in need. And I am not saying this to toot our own horn. We work a lot with the community and with the other churches. I'm saying this to say we have a heart in this. We're part of this community. We're not just trying to be a church that says, here, come into our building. We want to be a people that actually impact the community around us. And so that's the heart behind this, to actually work together. We can't do it alone, and you can't do it alone. No one in here can do it alone. But I believe that together, as we work together on this, we can actually solve these problems. So the issue at hand is we have a homelessness issue, and I can tell you it's increasing. Just from our food bank alone, we're seeing it's like every time we have a food bank distribution, we have a new record of the number of people that are coming in for food. It's radically increasing right now. So just from that point alone, the concern is, I know there's a lot of concerns out there. I know one of them is if we build it, they will come. If we provide a community, guess what? We're going to just bring them in. And I want to speak to that. And I know there's also concerns with the budget as well. And just, these are our tax dollars that are going out to help people. And is it the right way to handle it? So one of the things, just to address this, because I think sometimes there's a misperception, and I love what this group is doing, is they're actually trying to solve a problem that we may not see today, but it will be there tomorrow. There are encampments, as we've talked about, and they're in the parks, they're along the trails, they're in our creeks, in our recreation areas. And currently, because of the current laws, there is nothing we can do about it because we do not have a solution. And so we're looking to provide, and this is code enforcement, cannot keep homelessness out of our parks, out of our recreational areas. And so we have to find a solution that can address this so that we can manage our community. And we say, oh, it's not an issue. It isn't today, but it will be tomorrow. So I love that we're ahead of the game, we're ahead of the 8 ball, not behind the 8 ball. Let's not wait till this becomes a real problem. Let's solve it today. So let me say this too. I believe that homelessness, even in the word home, it's not necessarily, shelter is not the first problem. I believe that relationship is the first problem. And most people, in 2020, we spent every week up in Denver at 5 Points and at the Capitol building and the park up there, working with the homelessness situation up there. It's much different than it is down in our community, much different. But I believe that if we don't do something about it, we're gonna get to that point. But I've seen all levels of homelessness, worked with all different people, praying with people that are shooting up as we're praying for them. And but there's a part that we get to play in this, is that we are called to love one another. And if we can begin to love them, I believe that's going to be the very thing over everything else that's going to change this. And then we can provide them shelter as well. But it starts with the relationship side. And so these are kind of the problems at hand. I believe that it's the faith-based community that's going to need to step up to be a part of this. It's not that they're going to solve it by themselves. It's a community effort coming together. But it is the faith-based community that has the opportunity, I believe, to step up in this And there's some things that we can do in partnership with our county, who has just been amazing in this, with the towns. And it's going to require all the towns, I believe, working together. And then also with our businesses, with our nonprofits, and with our residents. And I love that we have a lot of interest in this. It's a good thing. So in short, we've actually already been doing what I'm going to propose here. It's a shift in the way that we do it. So we have something right now called the Winter Shelter Network. And we've worked with our county on this. And what we've done is in churches all across Douglas County, we're able to bring in homeless women and children during the winter months and house them. We house them in our churches. And so we're part of this. We have purchased cots, and we have volunteer teams that have come together, and they come in every day of the week. We house the homeless women and children during the winter months. We bring them into our church, our churches, the partner churches, and we give them breakfast, lunch, dinner. We get to come alongside them. And so it's not just here you are, you got a place to sleep, but we actually get to walk with them, begin to talk with them, begin to see what their problems are. Everyone has a unique issue, unique problem, but they're people just like us. One of us could be homeless tomorrow. And all of a sudden, the concern is there's that stigma of what homelessness is. As we work with the homelessness, I'll just say, in the last month, we've had 2 people come in that we've worked with, and we've got them out of homelessness. There was someone just before that who was on meth for 23 years, and we were able to get them out of homelessness. With the county and with a lot of the other churches, we have kept, I can say over the past 2 years, I don't have the exact number, but I could say it's over 100 families out of homelessness that were on the verge of homelessness. And so we just have an amazing opportunity, I believe, now to do something that has never been done before. I don't think this isn't something we said, oh, it's been done over here, let's just copy what they've done. I believe this is a new thing, but we're a forerunner county here. We do things and then people follow us. And that's the cool part about Douglas County. So let me just kind of get to my points here, because I could keep going.
Because you're a pastor.
We could be here till noon. What's that?
5 points in a poem.
5 points in a poem, yes. So I just want to hit the main points. So with this, the other thing we've been doing as we've been taking in the homeless women and children is we provide the transportation, we provide them a place to sleep, we give them breakfast, lunch, dinner. And then the hard part is they go from church to church to church to church every night. So imagine being homeless, especially some of these, it's a child with them, and you're being picked up, transported to the next church, picked up, transported to the next church, going around. It's a difficult thing. And we don't want to make it too comfortable. We're trying to get them out of that position, but we also want to come alongside them and build relationship with them. And so I am gonna preach to you for just a second. You just have to hear it. But I'm doing this in the sense so that you hear, this is the church's responsibility. And I'm just going to quote a few scriptures. And so Matthew 25 says this, it's 37 through 40. It says, then the righteous will answer him, Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? And when did we see you as a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothing and clothe you? And then it says, when did we see you sick or in prison or go and visit you? And the king will reply, truly I tell you, whatever you did to one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did to me. James 1:27 says this. It says, this is religion that God the Father accepts as pure and faultless, is this, to look after the orphan and the widow in their distress, and to keep oneself polluted by the world. Psalm 82:3 says this, defend the poor and the fatherless, do justice to the afflicted and the needy. 2 more verses. Isaiah 58:6-7 says this, is this not the kind of fast that I have chosen? Is it not to share your food with the hungry, to provide the poor homeless with shelter, and when you see the naked, to clothe them, and not to turn away from our own flesh and blood? And the last verse is in 1 John 3:16. It says this, and this is how we know what love is. Jesus Christ laid down his life for us, and now we must lay our lives down for our brothers and sisters. And then it says, if anyone has material possession and sees someone in need and has no compassion on them, how can they love God? How can the love of God be in them? Dear children, let us not love with word or tongue, but in action and in truth. I believe this is what the churches are called to, and I believe it's what we're all called to, is we're all called to love one another. So here's the take. We already have something that's been created. It's been successful. We've done it for over 5 years now. We have some general numbers that the value that we have created in doing this over the past 5 years is roughly almost $600,000. So it's over $100,000 a year that just this Winter Shelter Network program, the way it is right now, it's created a significant amount of value. I don't believe this is to be a government program. I believe it's to be a community program. It's to be led by the churches, but it's again in partnership with everyone working together. And so the plan would actually be for churches to take a homeless person and not to create a homeless community at all. That we don't need to set aside an area that here's our homeless community and we're going to bring all the homeless into that area and then we'll deal with them. But no, that actually we're going to come alongside one person who's a homeless person or a couple. And then over here, this church is going to take someone else. And then this church is going to take someone else. And so we're not creating a community of homelessness. What we're doing is we're actually creating an opportunity to come alongside relationally, help these people and get them out of homelessness. And so it's not a solution to find an alternative place for them to stay permanently. It's a place to come alongside and get them back on their feet. And I can say we have been doing this. It's proven and it's successful. Now all we're doing is we're taking it from inside the church to just right outside the church. What's the advantage of that? Now, instead of just homeless women and children, which we were trying to figure out, some churches could do both and some couldn't. And so in order to if we're going from day to day, the only way we could do it at that time was just women and children. Now we have the opportunity as we take this outside the church facility and now house them in a home. It can be a man, a woman, or with a child, or so it opens up that opportunity. Also, now it's not just during the winter months, but now it's year round that we can help somebody bring them in, get them on their feet, and then get them out, get them back into society, reintegrate them back into society. The other thing, there's a few other things, is that now we're not moving them from location to location. But I know our church and I know many other churches, the reason I was late, I was just meeting with 20 pastors as we're gathering together and we're praying together over our community. I know that churches have a heart to come alongside people. I know that people in general have a heart to help people. And so I can tell you that even as we've been helping homeless in our community and getting them back on their feet, people want to be involved. It's a great opportunity to help. And it's not a scary thing. I think this is the part you hear all these horror stories. I have not experienced that in Douglas County. And I've worked with many of the homeless throughout Douglas County. And I believe we can keep it that way if we're proactive in this approach and we begin to work with them now as we bring them in. I could keep going. Just make sure I get everything here and then I'll close. I think the one thing I just want to say is I believe it's a collaborative effort. And I know I've said it, but I just want to reiterate it, that this isn't even just, well, churches will figure it out now. It should be all of our burden and we get to all come together in this. But I believe it's going to keep our costs low if we do this together, if we work together. And I believe it's going to be much more successful than if we just try to kind of do it the template way that we've seen other places do it. I believe there's a better way to do this that will actually truly impact our community and bring these homeless people out of homelessness. And here's the other thing I would say is when and we've seen this as we've gotten somebody out of homelessness, 6 months down the road, there's that ability, you always see it where something comes and hits them and they can get tripped up. And if they don't have people around them to kind of help lift them up, they're going to go right back into that place. But what we've been able to do, and other churches have been able to do, is now we have relationship with them. They call us up and we say, no, we're going to walk with you. And so we're able to keep them on their feet. We're able to just do a minor supplement, whatever that's needed to keep them up. And now they're continuing to move out of that place and they're stronger. They need not only just a place, they need relationship. They need people around them. So is it going to cost something? Yeah. Is it going to cost our time? Yes. Is it going to take effort from each of us? Absolutely. But I believe together as a community, I really feel like we can do this together. So there you go. Love you guys. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that concept and a really high note of gratitude to the entire faith-based community. To bring it back to the public policy level, let's walk through the journey. So what we've heard is our citizens want some measure of compassionate code enforcement from law enforcement, our navigation team, to ensure that people really aren't violating the rights of businesses and citizens. They're not in medians right of ways. They're not, urinating, vandalizing, and doing things that they're not supposed to do. What we were told by our county attorney and by law enforcement is you can't really move people along unless there's a place for them to go. So we started talking about sheltering. We heard loud and clear from our community. We get it, but we don't want it in X area. We don't want it located in this specific location. The other piece was, as we talk about shelter, we want to make sure that it is comprehensive. It's not just, here's a place for you to go. It's job counseling, it's mental health counseling, it's substance abuse counseling that would help people transition out. Again, that sheltering piece supports the code enforcement. The beauty of Mike's concept is that the Winter Shelter Network has been around for more than a decade. Doing exactly that, providing particularly women and children with services when they are unhoused. Our community has significant buy-in for our Winter Shelter Network. They support the Winter Shelter Network. And we have heard from them. They've said, listen, why not let the faith-based community lead on this issue? So really pleased that Mike has already been doing that.
Oh, and I forgot the name.
Yeah.
Calling it the Douglas County Community Shelter Network.
Well,
I mean,
yes, sir.
that's-
Yeah. I think that
It's a
makes sense.
community-wide.
You're right. It's not an us or a you, it's a both.
Yeah.
But we've had the Winter Shelter Network. Why not just drop the winter?
The winter, yeah.
Right? And have it be led by our faith-based community. And that way the churches can provide some of that crisis management, some supportive services. The county can come alongside with some case management. In the meantime, now you have a place for people to go, which supports the code enforcement. So it's kind of a beautiful mix, and I really want to acknowledge and thank Mike for his concept and open it up to the working group and the executive committee for any thoughts.
So, Mike, I think this is an amazing idea because obviously from the law enforcement perspective, we're constantly trying to find resources, and our navigators tell you the same thing. We're looking for resources of where to take people to help them. And right now, the only resource we have is the light rail. Get them on the light rail, push them north. They're putting them on the light rail, pushing them south. We're just playing this game back and forth. And the adult male concept is the biggest. Last month alone, just of all the homeless contacts that the sheriff's office made, 82% were male and only 18% were female. So the Winter Shelter Network that was only serving female and kids was serving a very small population of what we're seeing so it's the male population that we're having the biggest challenge with that we really don't have a lot of resources for. So can you share with us how many of the pastors that are currently in the Winter Shelter Network are looking to open up their doors year round across the community to where I'm up in Highlands Ranch and this church is part of the Douglas County Community Shelter Network. We're going to call them. We're going to take this person over there. Are they ready for us?
Let me answer that one, Mike.
Let me say real quick, we've just brought this to the.
Well, I'm ready to go.
I know.
I wanted to answer.
Yeah, so yes, I think we're working through that with the group that is part of the Winter Shelter Network. I've also been talking as we're connected to a lot of churches in the community, talking to those pastors as well. I can say that I've had a lot of positive feedback. I've had pastors say, wow, this sounds amazing. Yeah, we would love to be a part of this. We have to and I gotta take it to our board. We gotta work through some of the details there. I've had some pastors, I had a pastor that said, well, we can't do it. We're actually located in a school, so we can't do it because it's not our property. But they said, but we have people and we have money. So we want to be a part of it. We're just going to have to be a part of it in a different way. So I think this is where some churches, they can say yes, and there'll be some that say, no, we can't do it. And I'll reiterate all these scripture verses again to them. But that's okay. No shame. I'm not like, it's not you're in or you're out. But I believe there will be enough. I think that the churches will rise up. And there's always it's two concerns. It's change. Anytime there's change, and anytime it's the unknown. It's like the worst thoughts come into your head. But we've actually, as we've been doing this, even through the Winter Shelter Network, and then also helping, we've been helping men as well. It's been an amazing thing. Does it always work out perfectly? No, sometimes we have to take them and put them in a rehab facility, and that's okay. But we still walk with them. And then others, man, we're able to come alongside them and get them back on their feet right at the church. And then now they've got jobs and they're back integrated into society. So I think we can do it. But the churches do have to step up and say yes to this. And we're going to have to talk to more churches. But so I wanted to bring it out here, and then we take it to more of the churches and say, come on, we've got the county on board. We've got the cities on board. Let's do this.
And Mike, I probably don't want answers to this. I'm going to give you a few things to think about as we're moving forward, because I think women and children is a little bit easier at times than it is going to be the single male homeless person. So I think you answered it already, but intoxicated and addicted at the time of contact is going to be a real challenge. And there's a lot of shelters around the country that absolutely refuse to have someone intoxicated come into their shelter. So it's something to consider. Like, how would we manage that?
Yeah.
And animals. So we have a lot of almost to have a dog. And so that they will not separate from that animal. Mental health. So if we run into somebody that's not only homeless, but are exhibiting extreme mental health, we need to have a solution for that. I know the navigators will work on that as well, and our CRT teams, but another thing to consider, because if you start putting people together with women and children, those are challenges, right?
Yeah.
Sex offenders. So not all our homeless are sex offenders. I know that's not what I'm saying, but we do have a portion of them that are going to be. And so what would you do if you had a sex offender, and you're going to need to know that, right? And then outside sheltering, what did you mean by that? When you said something about we might have the opportunity to not just shelter inside the church, but outside sheltering is what I thought you said, unless I misunderstood you.
Yeah, exactly. So it wouldn't be inside the church as we've done the Winter Shelter Network. Now it would be, so even as we've looked at different options, and we don't have that figured out, but it could be the pallets where they're in a sense like mobile units. They take just a couple hours you bring them in, you pop them up, you plug them in, and you have now a unit that's available on site on the property. Very similar to putting them inside the facility, but now they're outside the facility. And so if I think the idea would, it's just one or two pallets, per church. And so it's not like, again, you're not creating a homeless community. But if we had two out there, it opens up the opportunity to do more than what we've been able to do on the inside. Now, maybe not with the numbers, but I think what I'm realizing is I think if it's spread out more, we can hone in and have greater impact on one or two people really walking alongside them versus if we're just bringing them in for a day and then they're out.
Yeah, I love the idea. One other thing I want to throw out too is I think it is a good idea what you're talking about. I think this walk beside people is really the way to go.
Relationship.
When we end up dealing with homeless folks, especially, they're just so disheartened, right? Their dignity is gone. There's a lot of things that aren't there that should be there for someone to be successful, right? So I like the idea that what you're talking about is you're talking about giving that back to them, right? So I love that approach. But there's just a lot of challenges, right, to get to that point. And so I just wanted you to throw those out for you to consider, because those are all going to be really big challenges when it comes to some of the folks that we end up encountering.
Let's give Aaron a chance to respond to this.
Yeah.
as well.
Sorry.
So Pastor Mike presented his idea to the Churches of the Winter Shelter Network last week. And as you mentioned, there's questions that the churches have that they're bringing back to their congregations, to their team. As we've seen, there are different layers to serving a different population, to serving a population differently, even to serving year round. Because for the last 5 years, we've served just during the winter months, those more vulnerable months. And so these questions are all being asked and considered. We're meeting again towards the end of the month to bring these questions back, and the churches that think that this might be a journey that they want to go down and help develop that plan will be able to work with Pastor Mike to really flesh out the plan, because there are a lot of things, as we're seeing, that need to be fleshed out. So we're hopeful that churches all across Douglas County, not just the churches that have been engaged in the Winter Shelter Network, will come alongside him and in this effort to serve this population that hasn't been served previously. So I would say we're just at the beginning, which 7 years ago, which is where we were with Winter Shelter Network. It was just an idea. We didn't know how we were going to pull it off. And a model was born from there.
And it was a scary idea, and there were a lot of questions, and as we dove into it,
Yeah.
we realized it wasn't nearly as scary as we thought it would be.
Absolutely.
It was a lot easier than, there are all these like, what if this, what if that? And there are those potentials, but I think what we realize is it's not that bad. And these people are our flesh and blood. These are our brothers and our sisters. And it's like, yeah, they've had some difficult times, they've had some difficult things, but everyone needs someone to come alongside them. Everyone needs to know that they're loved. And I can tell you, most of these people do not feel loved. They feel abandoned. They feel like there's no hope, and we got to give them hope. Who else is going to do it?
I love that. And even elected officials need love. And I have to really acknowledge every once in a while, right? I walked into Cherry Hills on a Sunday with my family, and unbeknownst to me, they had already run with the Douglas County Homeless Initiative and were addressing it through videos and messaging and mobilizing their congregation. So Aaron White is a tremendous leader, as is Cherry Hills and many in the faith-based community. I think Chief Wilson raises a really good point, and we've heard from Jack Briggs, who runs the Colorado Springs Rescue Mission, about how he will take in people that are addicted to meth or have mental health issues, but they have programmatic resources and supportive services that help address that and get them to self-sufficiency on a whole person level. But
Let me just say one quick thing.
Can I just ask a question, though, logistic? I'm gonna be the pragmatic question.
No.
One of the things we're trying to do, yes, and you know what you talked about is poverty of relationships. I actually spent some time yesterday with a Parker resident who reached out to talk to me about this issue. She wasn't able to come today, but I forwarded her the information. And she said what we're missing in our community, it's relationships. So amen. I would have said it before, but one of the things we are trying to accomplish is being able to enforce our no camping bans. And so what I'm trying to understand is the linkage, and what we can't lose sight of in this conversation. I'm very, very excited about this opportunity. Is how will it, I don't know what the word is, but I'm gonna ask the attorney, will it qualify? Will it make us able to, what are the elements of this type of a program that need to be employed that would allow us to then enforce no camping bans? So that's the piece of it.
And I'll say it this way. The hope is yes.
Yeah.
And I think we're gonna have to work with the legal teams, and we're gonna have to, I mean, it's not black and white. Even the whole thing right now, it's not black and white. There's just these nuances. And so I think we're gonna have to sit down and really work with our teams and say, how can we make this so that that is a key part of it, that we can.
I just didn't want to lose sight of that in this
Not gonna
conversation.
Not gonna lose sight of
I
that.
do want to point out too,
Yeah.
I think it will, because the difference between Douglas County versus city of Colorado Springs or Denver is Denver's dealing with a homeless encampment of 40 and 50 at a time. To where if they come in, they gotta sweep, they gotta find placement for 40 or 50 people. Our encampments are 1 or 2 people. So if I have a encampment with 2 people, all I have to do is find some place for 2 people to
Right.
go.
I'm not
And
disagreeing.
so I
I just want to
I
make
think it would
sure.
work.
We'll check into it though. We need to.
No, I just want to make sure pragmatically it's going to, I want to do it regardless. I think it's great. But will it be enough to accomplish our other goal and I appreciate your perspective. I'm concerned what the ACLU is going to do.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, unfortunately, it's what I've learned after 14 and a half years in this space is that what I think sounds reasonable sometimes gets overturned in court.
Sure. Yeah, and we're working with the civil liberties, community and,
Right.
active with council to making sure that,
Right.
ensure that what we're doing is enforceable.
And
Yeah, go ahead, Amy. Yeah.
I'll give my 2 cents, just from researching this idea. There isn't a case on point with, the church. It really comes down to zoning. Typically, if the church is going to want to put pallets on and there are a couple of cases where it was the Board of County Commissioners that didn't want a church to have a specific type of zoning, not to deal with homelessness. There just isn't a case out there yet. But I think that if we can show, what the case law says is that if we can show that we legitimately have a bed available, then we can have this person move along. So we would have to show that, yes, through documentation that, this bed was available at this location. And we had transportation and services set up to provide for them. And I think that with all of that in place, I think that we are good to go.
And here's what's exciting about this, to Chief Duffy's point, is we have 81 people. We're so early.
Right.
I believe in this community. I believe in our citizens. I believe in your leadership. We've signed the pledge to get to functional zero, the Build for Zero pledge as a region. Could we do that? I would love to hear, fast forward to next year and hear Rand's point in time count. And hopefully through all of our efforts, we're getting to that functional zero. I know we are way over, and it's been a really robust discussion. We've got a lot of citizens here. I'm just gonna hang out. I'll stay until everybody says whatever they would like to say. We'll try to limit it to about a minute or two apiece, if you guys could just be respectful to your fellow citizens. But is there anything else for this meeting today with the executive committee and the working group? And if you have to go, I understand, no problem. We're a little bit over today, but I did want to open it up for public comment.
Yeah, we would ask if anyone may comment that they come to the podium. The microphones are in this room and not in the other room. So if we do want to open that up, that would be the one request from technology.
If you can go ahead and come up. So I do have a Rebecca Kay, a Sherry Hillman, a Ginger Shermer, Sherry Myra, Jean Ritchie, Bob Laguerre, Nikki Humphreys, and Sean Martin who've signed up. And even if you haven't signed up, that's okay too. So we'll start with Rebecca Kay. Is Rebecca in the room? Okay, thank you for being with us. Sherry Hillman.
And I would just stand up.
Well, if you could go to the podium.
The microphones are in this room. We apologize. So if you're over there, our online audience is not able to hear comments made from the other room. Thank you.
My name is Emily and I live over in Founders. There is a 15-year-old homeless child in our community and no one has done anything about it. The police know that this 15-year-old child is homeless. I want to know what is going to, how someone is going to help him. I feed him, I give him water, I talked to him, I've asked him, do you want me to take you to your parents? Do you want me to take you someplace? And he says he has no place to go. So I'm just a human who cares, okay? He's spent the night a few times, but I already have a house full of people and 2 big dogs that we have to lock one of them up when he stays because for his safety. And I just want to know that he's going to be taken care of.
Sherry, thank you for that comment. The woman to your immediate right, Tiffany, who's now leading our heart team, is probably the best person who can help navigate that situation. If you have a name and contact information, Tiffany, is that okay? Okay.
I will also point out, I'm the chairman of the board for the Juvenile Assessment Center for the 18th Judicial District. And this is what the JAC does in our community assessment piece, where we would gladly, that's what the JAC does is young people like this, we assess them and then we get them resources. So I'll give you my card at the end of this and, we'll help you with that
Wait a
too.
minute, give it to him so he can call
No,
you
I'll
and
give
think
it
that
to you.
he's
We'll
gonna get
We'll
arrested
find,
or
no,
what?
no, he's not under arrest. We'll find him. We'll talk to him.
Okay.
Sherry, I'll stay late. I oversee Child Protective Services for the county, so you and I can connect when we're finished.
Okay, well, I need to get going, but, and I only have one other comment that, I just want to make sure that he's taken care of, along with the homeless. I'm sorry, but nonprofit organizations don't always stay nonprofit, and I don't trust them, so I want to know accountability, who's going to be accountable for all these funds that are coming in, where they're going, who they're going to, things like that. And the sign or whatever, if you take law off of there and just change the wording to like community officer or resource officer or something like that, then it's not as scary. That's all, that's my suggestion.
Sherry, thanks so much. And you've got a business card from Chief Duffy and Ruby's hand, right, just to your right there. Thank you very much. Ginger Shermer.
Came this morning because I, as many parts of this community, were not aware of this homeless initiative. But I found out about it on the Nextdoor app. I don't think it's been made very clear to the citizens, Castle Rock, Lone Tree, and other areas that, I'm not gonna say encouraging, I think it's very much an ideology of how we're gonna handle our homeless. But we live here in a neighborhood that we came to for safety, to maintain our home values, to maintain our children's safety. And the numbers for homeless right now, we're somewhere 72, 74 in the winter, 92 in the summer. These are not big numbers. But if we start, and I'm going to use the word inviting, you can disagree with that word, inviting homeless to our community, and we're going to take care of them, and we're going to house them, and we're going to shelter them. I want to know the numbers. How many of these people are actually going to be rehabbed? It's great you have rehab some, but how many of the numbers you're going to bring in 90 and maybe 2? I don't want to see this beautiful area that we live in, that we chose for this reason, to have homeless, to have drugs, to be downtown infiltrating our businesses. I've worked all my life to have what I have. And I do have empathy for people who want to improve their lives and they need help. Help those people. But there's a lot of homeless who don't want the help, who are going to remain drug addicts, who are going to remain alcoholics. And I believe a lot of our community do not want that. We do not want to invite homeless into our area. I'm very, very opposed to this. And in terms of that sign, pink is a horrible color. You got too much wording.
I agree. It's supposed to be red, so.
White against pink does not allow for proper visibility. You got too much wording on there. I personally would outlaw panhandling because it is dangerous and it enables these people to come into our area. That would be my first response, not commit multiple committees to do this. So again, I appreciate your time. I appreciate everybody who wants to make people's lives better is a good thing because we want people to have better opportunities, but we do not want to invite crime, homelessness, drugs, potential impaired safety into this beautiful area we live.
Thank you, Ms. Shermer. That's actually exactly why we're here. I would just reiterate, that's exactly why we're here, is to keep our community clean, safe, and hopefully get to functional zero soon. Can I get Sherry Myra? Hello.
Hi, I'm Sherry Myra. First of all, I just wanted to say thank you. You can tell there's a lot of great thoughtfulness that's going into this. I also just heard about this initiative as well. So I think that definitely having a very robust communication program is absolutely needed. I'm sure you guys are looking at that. But I shared some of the same concerns around safety and funding. And for me, being compassionate is not disregarding the facts. So I support a youth group, and we went out as part of the volunteer opportunity to clean up East Plum Creek Trail. And I was shocked at how big that encampment was. I was shocked at the burn spots that we were seeing. I was shocked at the collective items that they had in that encampment. And just knowing, when I spoke to a friend who's in law enforcement, and he mentioned, when I mentioned this to him, he said, yeah, when those things get taken away, they go out and they refine those things. And I think that it is not compassionate to disregard the facts about how they're coming up with these items. And so I'm a very compassionate person. But compassion to me isn't giving out to everybody, right? It is focusing those resources to help those people that are ready for change. They're saying, I need something, I want out of this. And sometimes it does take people hitting rock bottom. And I agree completely with what you said, Pastor, that relationships are needed. But until these people are ready for those relationships, this money, this funding goes to enabling. That would be a big concern. I was running down the East Plum Creek Trail with a friend before we did this cleanup at the this encampment. And all of a sudden I could just smell cigarette smoke, and you get that feeling like, hey, this may not be a safe location. That should not be happening in our communities. I know that that's what this group is looking to solve, is we need to increase safety while we're helping these individuals that are ready to be helped. I loved your ideas, Mayor, about the signage right off the bat. When I was it was hard to read and to understand. I know a lot of great effort went into that. I'm a project manager. I've had projects where, right, things are like, hey, this is going in the wrong direction. We've already invested. It doesn't mean keep going down that. Sometimes you have to cut your losses so that in 10 years, we're not looking at this and we're not going, oh my goodness, we've completely overwhelmed our community. So I say that with a lot of appreciation for what this group is doing. When you brought up your comments, in my mind, and again, I'm a very compassionate person. Honestly, I think the sign should say, direct handouts, right? Something very simple. We want to help, we want to go in the right places, but we don't want to do it at the risk of the safety and the damage to our community long-term.
And Ms. Myra, if you can wrap up your comments, we have a number, but thank you very much.
So I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. We have a Jeannie Ritchie.
She had to leave.
Okay, well, please.
You can have her time.
Okay,
Or somebody else.
okay, we have Bob Laguerre.
Thank you. My name is Bob Laguerre. I'm a Douglas County resident in Aurora, and I'm representing your department. And I appreciate the discussion here today, and just wanted to say that my observation is that Douglas County, or this group, or the commissioners, I don't know who, used direct democracy to decide that you weren't going to have any focused site in the county for services. And the idea of spreading it out among the churches, I think, can be successful. We have a lot of experience in Aurora trying to provide services. As long as you have the mental health capacity to go out to each of those churches and work with those individuals. Every person on the street has underlying trauma that put them on the street in the first place. You can't address that or work on that, you're never going to get fixed. And you need the mental health aspect. You need a nurse that is going to go around and work with these people on the street. I don't think 1 or 2 pallet shelters in each location is going to work. You're going to need more than that. Maybe it's 3, maybe it's 5. But unless you start moving them from one city to the next because they have an available pallet shelter, then you're taking them out of the community where you found them or the city where you found them. And I understand that nobody in the county, no majority of your residents is ever going to say, we embrace having a homeless shelter here. It just isn't going to happen. But we've had dozens of hearings on citing those locations in Aurora, and people come out en masse. And so the elected officials have to make the tough decision using representative government and say, we need this in our community. and they vote to put it somewhere. So whether it be giving the land use approvals to the churches or whatever it takes, Douglas County needs to find a way to provide a focus point, whether it be on a small scale at each church or a larger scale in 2 or 3 places in the county where you can provide nurse services, mental health services, employment services, get the veterans connected with their VA benefits that they may not be connected with, healthcare for veterans. But the bottom line is taking someone that you find and shipping them to Denver or Aurora or some other city is not going to solve the problem. And I can assure you that you'll never win the shuttle wars if that's the approach that you end up taking, because Denver can put 5 people on a train to Lone Tree for every one that you drop off in Denver. So I appreciate that you're looking for a solution, but for the elected officials, if you think you're ever going to find a focused solution that the people in the community are going to embrace and say, we love this, please do it at our church in our neighborhood. It's not going to happen. You're going to have to make a real tough decision on some of these land use approvals to get this done and serve your community or your county. So thank you very much.
So Bob, thank you for being here. I really appreciate that. And I don't know if, I appreciate you reaching out to Mayor Kaufman. We are thankful that Aurora is represented here. I just want to make it really clear. I know there's been a narrative out there that somehow Douglas County is shipping its homeless to Aurora. That is categorically false. And we just reiterate that 76% of the people leaving our jail are not from this county. And we're not telling them they have to go anywhere. That's a decision that they make. So if they do have an aunt or an uncle in Aurora, we will provide them with family reunification back in Aurora, and that will be the case. But again, 76% of the people leaving our jail are not from here. And frankly, a lot of them are from Aurora. So I appreciate you being here. I don't want to do anything in violation of our citizens. We always say we do things with people, not to them. And our citizens have said, hey, partner with the faith-based community. So I think we're really encouraged that Mike and others are here to help advance that notion. I do have a Nikki Humphreys. Is Nikki here?
Thank you for what you're doing. And I appreciate what Pastor Mike had to say and what the other citizens have had to say, because the vulnerable populations are the populations that I think need the most addressing. Those are the ones that, for the most part, are the ones that have, by no choice of their own, really ended up homeless or on the verge of homelessness and want to get out. They have made whatever choice that they've made and want to get out. And it's the ones that through alcoholism and addiction have made the choice and they're homeless. They're going to stay homeless because they've made that choice. They don't want to get out of homelessness. And I have seen this for years. I have been working with homeless as well for over 2 years. And I brought my kids up working with the homeless population, and they knew no different. I mean, we'd make peanut butter sandwiches with homeless organizations, we feed them, and so they knew that that's what we did. We worked with faith-based organizations, and I've worked with the Salvation Army. I've worked with several homeless shelters, and I know what it is like to work with the homeless and those that are in homeless shelters. But those that don't want to be in the shelters because they've got rules and guidelines, they will not go in the shelters. And I tell you, you've got to make those rules. You've got to make those guidelines, because if you don't, you're bringing in those that are problems. And so you've also got those that are making the choice to be homeless, and they're going to come. If you build it, they will come. And if they've got a place to stay, by golly, they will stay there. And that's why they're in their tents, and they will keep coming, they will keep coming. And Denver's overrun, tent after tent after tent after tent. But boy, we've got open space. We've got lovely places to stay. And that's why they're coming here, because it's great. And, but they're making the choice to live in the street or in the open space along the river. And I've run too. I've ridden my bike. It's not as safe anymore. And so we have got to address this. I don't know how we're going to do it, but if we keep catering to those that are making the choice, not those that are vulnerable, but those that are making the choice, those that are addicted, those that are alcoholic, it's the services that they need, that if we're not providing those, if we are not addressing that and getting them the services they need, they don't want them. They just don't want them. Then that's the problem. That is the problem that needs to be addressed, or the other things won't go away.
That's a great comment. Thanks, Ms. Humphries.
Thank you.
Got a Sean Martin. Sean Martin still here? Okay, we have a couple of online comments as well. Arroya Mahana.
Hi there. Thank you so much. I just wanted to comment from a different perspective. I'm an emergency medicine doctor, and I obviously took a oath to help people. And as the previous commenter said, there is a lot of vulnerable people in this population of homelessness. But it's been mentioned, I believe, by the sheriff, there's also a lot of contaminant mental health issues, as well as substance abuse that goes along with homelessness. So I wanted to clarify something. I'm new to these meetings as well. I've heard rumors that there has been land purchased somewhere in Castle Rock for a shelter, and I would like to just hear from the source whether that is indeed true, before I go further with my
Not true.
Okay.
Not true.
Not
No.
true. Okay. Thank you. So I think I'm just gonna kind of voice what a lot of other people have said. Like, I like what you are doing in terms of wanting to help people, and obviously in my line of work, that is something that I 100% do every day. But I also hope that as citizens, we're aware that yes, a lot of homeless are vulnerable, but there are also, whether it's mental health or whether it's the substance abuse, there are a lot of increases in crime that go along with homelessness. And my husband's also a firefighter paramedic. He worked in a big city, and a lot of the fires that are started are from homelessness. So I think we have to look at how do we also keep vulnerable citizens that are already in our counties, how do we keep protecting them from increased crime, increased fires, increased resources. It's also going to take a lot of, demand on our EMS, whether it's, mental health calls, E2H or alcohol calls, whether it's crime. So I appreciate what you're doing. I hope we're, as citizens, also keeping in mind that by trying to help others, we need to make sure that we keep our current citizens also safe.
Thank you, Ms. Mahana. Great comment. Appreciate it. So the last online comment that I have is Andrea Pomarico.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great. Well, I'm going to echo what the woman just before said and a lot of others said. I extensively typed poorly in the chat a lot of what I'll say, so it might be easier to read some of that. But I guess I want to first say thank you to the whole panel for doing this. My family has been involved in the mental health initiative for 45 years. It makes me really emotional because I have a sister with schizophrenia that would be on the streets otherwise. So this is really near and dear to my heart. But I want to say I really do agree with the less is more idea relative to signage. I love the idea of give a hand up, not a hand out. It's a positive message and it allows people to take action. However, I think it's really important that there is a phone number listed. And the reason why is when our family member was diagnosed with schizophrenia, we did not know where to go. CAMI didn't exist and these other institutions. And so when people are really in crisis and there's a concerned citizen like I am often, there isn't an easy way to tell the person where to go for help. So I think the signage shouldn't just serve the homeless or serve the community that's giving the handouts, but also those that are really in need. So they have a simple, quick, concise way to reach out. A lot of them don't have internet access. So having a website, where they get more information may not be viable. So I do love that there is a phone number available. And I also I'll back up and say, I come from a highly educated family. We were middle class, but I too found myself homeless, living in my car, couch surfing in college, because funds were so tight. And again, at that point, I didn't know where to go for help. And, as a single woman living in a car, it's not optimal. So again, whatever we can do to help people early on and not have to prolong the suffering is ideal. And I know that's still complicated. And I think I guess, no, those were really the big things that I wanted to share. Well, I guess lastly, I will say I own 2 properties in Castle Rock that are sizable. They're rural and relative to the fire issues. I had somebody place an encampment on my mountain property just outside of my property line. When I went to investigate the fire ring they had made, there were no water resources. They just doused it with a little bit of dirt, but that could have taken up a national forest right away. So having an encampment close in town doesn't feel safe to me as a female citizen that often walks around alone. And it also doesn't, it doesn't, I don't think, provide the resources in a bigger area where the mental health issue can be addressed and those people can be isolated and put into safer situations, both for themselves and others. So I'll close with that.
Ms. Bomariko, thank you so much for your comment. That's the last comment that I had online, but if there's anybody in the room, yes, ma'am. Sure.
My name is Gail Hornfall. I live in Castle Rock. I moved here 2 years ago from an hour outside of New York City, so I've seen quite a bit. I live in Connecticut. We had a church that the church burned down because they were smoking inside the church, and so we helped rebuild it, the community. But that is an issue. I also retired in 2020 from the federal government. I worked 25 years as a counselor in prisons. I oversaw 2 units, a mental health unit and a drug treatment unit. So I understand the delicate nature of homelessness and needs of mental health and drug addiction. With that being said, I now work at Perry's Pizza in Castle Rock. I was with Josh Snell that night that he was stabbed to death by a homeless man. It changed my life. There's no prayers that could have gone through my head that night to save Josh. The wounds were so deep. I held him during his last breaths, performed CPR. These are some of the things that we need to think about, bringing homeless or helping them in our community. It's not just easy, we'll sit down with them and talk with them and say some prayers, I'm sorry, Pastor. But there's a lot of other issues that come along with it also. And a moment ago, when you mentioned possibly bringing in men into your area at your church, I live less than a mile away from you. So my heart started racing when you said you wanted to bring them to your church area. I hope you reconsider. Like I said, there's a lot that goes along with that. It's not just cut and dry, as the police will tell you. Just sitting down and chatting with them. So, I hope you all consider not pushing away, but I don't know, other factors in Castle Rock. Thank you.
Hey, man, thank you so much for sharing your personal experience. Lift up our thoughts and prayers to Josh Snell and everybody at the Perry's community. We know it was really significant for you. Thank you for being with us today. Let me just open it up both online and in the room. Is there anyone else that would like to comment? Yes, ma'am.
And I would like a chance to talk next, please.
Very Smith, I'd just like to ask a couple follow-up questions. The emergency room physician asked whether your plan was to purchase land, and you said no, that was not the plan. Do you have plans to use already existing county land to put a homeless shelter on?
Well, this is citizen comment, but I'm pleased to tell you that we have not made any decisions about any purchases. I know staff has looked into about 16 different potential areas.
Use of existing land, because then, you don't have to deal with the purchase issue, but are you planning on repurposing already existing land to put a homeless shelter on?
We have looked at about 16 different options and no decision has been made.
And then my next question is, if you're going to do this to our county, have you figured out how the distribution? Because it sounds like, from what I'm hearing, that the primary location for this will be Castle Rock, where you're going to visit all of this too. Is there a plan to make sure that outside of Heritage Hills, you get to enjoy this? Or in Parker, you get to enjoy this? Or in Highlands Ranch, you get to enjoy this? It shouldn't just be the Castle Rock that has to put up with this.
So thanks for being here. I think that's why the pastor brought up the concept of churches throughout the community, potentially taking on some measure of responsibility for that code enforcement piece that would encompass some sheltering. But that's why we're here, is to talk about how that happens throughout the county. Let me just reiterate, I was with the town of Castle Rock at length, answered the questions of every council member for about an hour. No decision has been made to just simply locate a facility in Castle Rock, zero. Okay, thank you very much. Commissioner Thomas.
Thank you. Thank you, Audrey. It's good to see you. I haven't seen you for a while. I just want to introduce myself. I'm Laura Thomas. I'm one of the 3 commissioners. And so what you all have to say is very important. I'll be here afterwards to listen to you. I'd also like to point out that Mike Hill is in the back. Mike, would you just stand up for a minute? I want to let you know that Mike is the executive director of our public health department. And so he is here also because he understands that this is a public health issue. Our health department is new. We are up and running. We will be completely serving Douglas County with no Tri-County assistance as of December 15th. And that's why I wanted you all to meet Mike. Mike came here from California, and he has done an amazing job building our health department. And that's why he's here. So thank you for the time.
Commissioner Thomas, thank you for that comment. And Mike, would you like to share anything with the group today? We don't mean to put you on the spot, but since you're here.
But you just did.
But I just did. We did.
Well, I'm happy to be in Castle Rock for a number of reasons, and I'm happy to be at this meeting today. Because I've heard all these stories across the country in my travels. I've worked in 6 different states. It's not an easily solved issue. If you build it, they will come, but if you don't build something, they're going to come anyway. So it's not a simple problem, no simple solutions. I'm trying to learn. If I have anything helpful to say, it's been an interesting.
Can I ask a question real quick, Mike? So how do you see the role of the new Douglas County, your department, in working with us with the homeless? Because we're talking about significant mental health needs with this population. How do you see your role with that?
Yeah, so I think part of the reason that I get invited here is because I also ran mental health. use services, so populations and a lot with the law enforcement, and we had teams, the interdisciplinary teams that included law enforcement to go out and try and work with people. But again, as everywhere, it's okay, you work with them, belong in a rehab facility where we can take you. So that's gonna be a problem until you figure out where you can take them. You've got to take them somewhere, else they're gonna still be lighting fires in your backyard and wherever they are. It's again, not simple. Whatever we can do, there's a mandate on my department to get involved with mental health issues in some way. That's still a little bit nebulous on where the Board of Health wants me to go with that, but anything that affects the health of the public is part of our job, and we want to do what we can.
Thank you, Mike. We are so proud of the Douglas County Health Department and have every faith in you and your partnership. So thank you for being with us today. We really appreciate it. Yes, sir.
My name is Dave Love, and I pastor Calvary Chapel, Castle Rock here. And so I am partnering with Mike, and I'm very excited about what we can do and things like that. I do think part of this discussion is, and I know that I've talked to Mike about this, is that there has to be some sort of guidelines of how we're going to do this, who is to come in to the church. If you're absolutely crazy and you definitely have a meth addiction, we probably cannot take care of that situation. I think from what I've kind of heard here, one of the questions that we all have, if the homeless don't want to be helped, then what do you do? And so Mike and I have talked about this, saying, hey, if there's could be some sort of guideline or program that we're offering at our church, and they go through it for like 3 or 4 days, and we have like a 3-week program, whatever, and then they just kind of bolt and get drunk one day. And then we say, well, you can't come back until you're sober. And then they keep doing this. Then what? And then they go over to Mike's church over there, and then they do the same thing. Then what? And then they're just kind of bouncing around. We have to find some sort of solution of going, hey, we've offered you this, we've offered you this, we've offered you this, and 3 strikes, you're out. I mean, at least here in Douglas County, something like that, or they're just going to be bouncing around. And so I do think that has to be part of the conversation. What happens if they don't want help? Where do we go from there? So that's all I'm saying.
Thank you, Pastor. Appreciate that. Hi.
I'll be brief. I just actually have one question on law enforcement. So the parks that are scattered all throughout Castle Rock, they're basically owned by the HOAs. Are those considered private property? Because I'm starting to see remnants of things in the slides, in the swings. There was a comment somebody had made that they took their children to the park and they were getting ready to go on the slide. And a homeless person came out of the tunnel slide with their pillow and their blanket. Is that considered private property? Can we call the police if they're there?
I'll turn that over to our sheriff's office.
Public parks are not considered private property, and that's one of the frustrations that we have is, I work for Douglas County, so we're working up in the unincorporated area, but the parks up in Douglas County, same with Highlands Ranch Metro District, that's a public area. They can be there. We've worked with them to put some signage up to close the park. So if we have signage to say this park's closed at 11 p.m., well, then that stops the camping. We can go there and say, you can't sleep here tonight because the park is officially closed. You got to move. Things like that. So it's kind of a frustrating piece.
Because I'm thinking of like some of the spaces that are maintained by the association. So those aren't privately owned.
I can't speak to
I think
HOA.
it should be addressed if we could have some legal on there, because I know if that happened in my HOA, I know where I'd be.
It depends on how the parks are funded. So if they're funded like for South Suburban funds,
Funded by our HOA.
so if it's 100% your HOA and there's no tax dollars associated with it, it's different than if it's that's what I have been told.
Okay.
So if there's tax dollars that are going to fund operations or maintenance or the purchase of that park, taxpayer dollars, it's open and it's not a private. But again, I'm an engineer. So these are just questions I've asked in my own community, and those are the answers I've gotten.
And so who would have the answer?
It's a really good question, and I think what we heard from legal and from Tiffany is that HEART team can address issues related to homelessness on both public and private property.
And when do you think that'll be up and running?
It-
I
well-
volunteer at the Help and Hope Center.
Yeah.
And so we have a lot of people come in, and we had somebody come from Larkspur last time I was there. And she had her tent stolen and this and that. She had a lot of problems going on. And it would be nice to have this phone number to say, you know, and I'm sure the Help and Hope Center will be one of the first people, but those people are all gone. I volunteer in the afternoon in the and so a lot of those people have gone by then. I think they stopped intake like at noon. So I'm the one kind of dealing with them and running to the pantry and scurrying to get food and whatnot. And so I feel like, when will I be able to give these people a phone number?
So we'll be working directly with Help and Hope Center and our community partners to establish a way to refer through their staff and their volunteers to make that direct line. It won't even need to be a phone number. It'll be a more direct referral program. So we're already working with Help and Hope, Catholic Charities, MANA, Secor, our law enforcement partners to do that. So know that that's in the works behind the scene. We're working with Dan and his team to be able to make those direct connections. We want to be available to those partners as well, unequivocally. So that's where we have 2 of our 3 staff members on board right now. They are currently out with law enforcement, starting to make some of those contacts, starting to learn about resources. So it is in the process of rolling up, fully operational, looking a couple more weeks till we get our training wrapped up. We have to do some safety training, but they're out there, as Tiffany explained earlier, are making those contacts, are starting to do the initial work. And we're just trying to put some final safety pieces on it before they're fully functional. But we're functional, just not quite there all the way yet. Does that make sense? We're in beta testing. How does that sound if we're going to put a term to it?
And to answer your question about, because you asked, can we call the police? The answer is, and I'll say this for every law enforcement agency in Douglas County, absolutely. We encourage you. Somebody comes out of a tunnel with a pillow, you give us a call. We're sending an officer over there. We're going to contact that person. We're going to clear that person. We're going to determine why that person's there. We're going to make sure that park stays safe. So
I hate to waste their time.
no, that's, you know, I love citizens. I love citizens.
Yeah.
This is what we're here. This is why we're here. This is why you guys have us. You're never wasting our time. You call us anytime for anything.
And one place to maybe watch is that tunnel that goes under the meadows to the green.
Yep.
They're starting to get some homeless things built up there, and I walk that every day, and there's a lot of kids that use that to go to the pool. So that's a little scary.
And the one thing I would say, Castle Rock's not, couldn't make it today because they were in some training, but Castle Rock PD along with Douglas County Sheriff's Office and Lone Tree PD is gonna be doing the same. Is we have a full-time officer now. That's all she does is contact and go to homeless calls. Castle Rock just brought their officer on. His name's Paul Longman. He came from Las Vegas, worked Fremont. All he worked on was homeless. So he's their full-time homeless guy. You should meet Paul. He's about 6'6". He's very good. So, Castle Rock's ready to go. So they're very progressive. And, yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. So website, phone number on the way, and I saw Tiffany taking notes on the locations already. So let me just make sure, anybody else online or in person that would like to comment today?
No online.
No more online. Okay, anybody else here with us? Okay, well, I know we are about an hour over, but let me just say, I am really pleased and thankful for all of you that have attended with us today. You're here because you're deeply passionate about this issue. So our thanks to our citizens, our leadership, law enforcement, and our faith-based community. We'll see you next time.
Yeah.
So